what's going on?
Are you guys ready for a Rhoda Young live update? It's been a while since I've done a Rhoda Young live update on the Dare Show podcast. First of all, you can find me on Spotify podcast, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Google Play. I'm also on YouTube at the Dare Show podcast. Also, Instagram is my love, my need tonight. So, it's been a while since I've done a Rhoda Young because nothing's really I'm trying to remember, it was like late last year. Nothing was really popping, and then like her views weren't showing up. Oh, the last really major one was the Walmart shooting right before Thanksgiving. And that is still like lingering on with, somebody called in like I think yesterday or 2 days ago about information. But anyways, nothing's been really going on. But this story with Billy, Daryl, and whatever Mr. Daryl, I'm forgetting. It's two dudes and then one other dude, and they were living in a apartment they were living in a house. That got the electricity shut off, and they were living in there for 2 weeks. The two dudes, one has Parkinson's disease and the other one is blind. And so one of the nurses had been, bear with me because there's a lot of information and I'm trying to go through it as I remember. One of the nurses' mother called Rhoda to inform her about this story. They had been living in the house for 2 weeks so far, up until 2 weeks. No. Yes? Because this has been going on for a month, almost a month. So I think they've been almost dealing with this. Yeah, I believe they were in the house for 2 weeks. With no heat, no electricity, because they were subleasing the house through Kacia St. Clair, who we all thought was a black woman, but she's a white woman, a white pastor who was conveniently out of town during when Rhoda picked up on the story. She was on a conference or a convention, something like that. A pastor. This is a pastor, right, you guys? So Kacia runs a nonprofit. I don't know the name of it. Like, I've heard it, but I don't remember the name of it. And the nonprofit helps people get into housing. Well, Kacia is, okay, that's the one, that was like one of the first things that got me confused. Was Kacia is the nonprofit, but they're paying rent to Kacia because she's being subleased. What? And it's going to the nonprofit. Okay, there's that. Kacia gave them a propane tank or something like that to put inside of the house. Well, it was inside the house to give them heat. And I think Billy, who is on probation, this all played out later in the story. Billy, who was on probation, I think he was living downstairs and the two men were living upstairs. Billy, Mr. Daryl, and I want to call him Watson. Oh, wait, did I write it down? No. They were living upstairs, and one of the problems were the heat wasn't going upstairs. And so the nurses was like, during the initial interview, I don't think I watched the whole interview because it was a long interview. And it was dark. And I didn't know what's going on. But during the situation, the nurse was like, no, the heat does not go upstairs. Also, this was like during that polar, really bad weather. America was going through that really, really bad weather. The like crazy snow, frigid temperatures. It was like a couple of weeks before Christmas, or that Christmas week, and it was like what is it called? Freezing temperatures here, pipes freezing, stuff like that going on. So it was absolutely freezing in Virginia. I think Hampton, Virginia, and they had no electricity. So Rhoda came over, and she got the money because they needed to turn the lights on. Let me tell you this part. Kecia's nonprofit had a bunch of houses around, right? So as the people moved out or something happened, whatever, the bills went up. They collected Virginia Power, or whatever they call it. It's a weird name. Virginia is such a weird state. I swear the names of the city, the names of the organizations, the government officials, it's just everything is crazy in Virginia. So Virginia Power took all the houses and made it one bill and laid it on the house that Billy and the two men were living at, which totaled to $22,000 that Kecia Kecia is supposed to be paying this light bill. So that's why they cut it off. They took all of Kecia's housing that she didn't pay, I'm guessing, because the people left, and put it on that one house, and then cut that off. Kecia, like I said, is a part of this nonprofit, Kecia St. Clair. So then Rhoda, in order to get the lights back on, they had to do a lot. First of all, Rhoda ended up talking to I thought he was the manager. I mean, the owner of the house, but I'm guessing she was talking to the rental, the people who Kecia was leasing the house from. They had to get the lease in Billy's name. Side note, Billy is low-key, maybe he's lying. I don't know how much he had been taking care of the men, cooking them food, doing, I guess, like the nursely duties that a nurse would normally do. And he ended up having to get the lease put in his name to like a release. I thought Kecia was not a part of the lease. That lease, I thought it was just a direct lease between Billy and the landlord, but Billy and the agency, the rental agency. There was a $1,400 deposit to get the lights turned back on. So Rhoda asked her followers, all of you guys, and to donate to this cause. Of course, like that, she can donate lots of money. She got the money. They end up putting everybody into a hotel, and I think for like a week or something like that. So they get in the hotel, and then all hell really, really breaks loose. Everybody is looking up Kecia's PPP loan money, the grant money. I think it was like $30,000 in like grant money or something she had gotten a couple years ago. They looked at, I believe, I don't know how this happened, but somehow I believe all three of the men were like sex offenders or some kind of offenders. But I'm like, even the blind man? Like, it just wasn't making sense. People were just like looking up crazy, like there's doing background checks. I don't know how people did this, but I guess some stuff is very public information. But like looking up Billy's information, multiple assault charges, the other two men and their background, Keisha's background. It was just like, it went to shit really fast. So then Rhoda like does this like, a call in or sort of call in, and she's talking to this one woman from New York, and she kind of was seeming kind of harsh and going back and forth. Rhoda made like a couple new friends throughout this situation, which is so fun to having, the callers chime in, the fans chime in. She had deleted that video, but I had listened to it the night before. And so, yeah, it was like a hour long of like this girl from New York going back and forth with Rhoda and then back and forth with D. I'm not sure where he's from. I think he might be in the Virginia area. In the Virginia state, I don't mean area. Back and forth with D, but that lady, the girl in New York, she had like picked up on some interesting things about Billy and what he said and what he didn't say. And so, okay, I'm trying to fast forward because it's been so much. It's literally been like every day. So then somehow it was like detailing certain things that were going on and coming out. And, fast forward a little bit. The men, this has literally been going on since Christmas, actually. After Christmas. I think the week of New Year's. The week after Christmas. Up until like yesterday or Monday, it finally, kind of got a resolution in a sense. So they're in the hotel. People are deep diving into the videos. The men, what the men said, one thing that the men said was they did not want to go back to that house and live with Billy because Billy is a tyrant. Billy is coming off a little fraudulent with his like, I'm a Christian, I listen to my gospel, I cook and clean, yada yada yada. But then there's this other side of Billy that a couple of other people and Rhoda have experienced where he's yelling and cussing and getting irate, and that is what Rhoda picked up on. And Rhoda was like, talking to the fans and stuff like, I don't think the men should be in that house with him because of his irateness and how crazy he can get. Which I was like, I don't know. But then actually, a couple days later, we actually all see it and how Billy is actually a little too much when it comes down at the end of the day. So they were just like, Billy, the two men were just like, he wasn't really good, nice to us, great to us. We would go like a day without eating. He'll be like yelling and like getting irate and stuff, that rapport. And so Rhoda ended up calling adult services and reporting the situation. And Rhoda a couple of times have called adult services or adult abuse because, excuse me, this is pretty much adult abuse, letting the lights go out. You're the landlord, or I'm leasing this this place from you, and there's no lights in it. You can't live in a place that doesn't have lights. Then you give us this propane tank that could blow us up, right? And then the propane tank is even heating up the entire house. There's no electricity, so the food is gone. We're eating ramen noodles. Somehow, I don't even know how they were making the ramen noodles. Like, it was just like 2 weeks of like, what the fuck? So Rhoda's constantly, for like a week or so, reporting this, going back and forth with Billy, trying to figure out situations. People end up like donating more money for them to stay in hotels, getting the money, waiting for the Virginia Power to come and turn the lights back on. The Virginia Power needed a new lease. They needed this. They needed that. It was crazy, and that it was like maybe the thick of it at that point. So I think we can fast forward a little bit to the last 2 weeks.
Next car, honey, next car.
So in the last couple of weeks, Virginia Power ended up actually getting the lights turned back on. But the men, Rhoda, Virginia Power ended up getting the lights turned back on with the $1,400. The men in the height, and I can see what Rhoda was saying, and Rhoda's opinion, Rhoda's perspective was in the height, in the thick of, we're getting out of here, we need money, we're homeless almost, we're getting a little help. In the thick of that, the men were like, we don't want to go back and live with Billy. Technically, okay, not technically, that's kind of their perspective. So when the lights got turned back on, by the time the lights got turned back on, services were being called and answered. People were, officials were answering. One of them has a caseworker. I think the veteran has a caseworker. And they were like, okay, well, we're going to get you guys in a new home. 2 things. We're going to get you guys in a new home. But then Rhoda believes Kacia had called and said that they need more help than Kacia St. Clair called and was like, they need more help, kind of sabotaging the situation. They need more help than what they are saying. They need, they're elderly. Of course, one is blind, but they're elderly and they need more nurse attention and they need this and that and a better housing. She kind of made it seem like Kacia called in sabotage. Secondly, the men were not on that second lease that Billy had remade with. I thought it was with the landlord, the man that was subleasing that was leasing it to Kacia. So that's Rhoda's perspective. Sure, they don't want to go back, but they still live there, but they're not on that lease. And that's what we end up finding out when she went to, it was like one of the last days in the hotel. The lights were back on, and she ended up calling the police and calling Billy's probation officer, who Rhoda was kind of like, okay. And then there's this 2-sided thing that I kind of understand. As a probation officer, they will put you back in jail for, looking the wrong way, right? I feel like, I think we all kind of feel like probation officers are sort of like their parents in a sense, but then also probation officers are not your parents. So the probation officer is basically saying, I can talk to Billy and tell him that he needs to let these men. Oh, Billy wasn't quote unquote, letting these men back into the house because they weren't on the lease. He had taken all their stuff out and beds, and he was like taking the beds to the streets and stuff like that. And he was like dogging them, saying, they were nasty and dirty and eat a lot. And there was like roaches and dirty diapers, dirty adult diapers everywhere. And it wasn't making any sense, but it was crazy. Like dogging these men. They're offenders. And I was just like, oh my gosh. So Rhoda calls, like I said, Rhoda called the his probation officer, Billy's probation officer, and she's basically like, I can't do it. I can talk to him, but I can't convince him not to let these men back in. But if anything comes up legally, that's when I step in. Rhoda's like, well, I'm reporting you and Billy to adult services for these adult abuse. And Keisha and everybody's going to jail. So Rhoda ends up calling the police to like get an escort for them to come, I guess, to like de-escalate the situation. And that's when Rhoda had talked to one of the neighbors who had helped them. And the neighbor was like, well, they said they did not want to come back here. And on their lease, they're not on the lease. And so Rhoda was just like, but I wouldn't have this is what Rhoda's whole thing was. I wouldn't have given Billy, a grown ass man, $1,400 to get his lights turned back on. I did it for everybody. So now she's like, I'm suing Billy for the $1,400, for like false, not false advertisement, doing something. Basically, I guess, like, I'm forgetting the word. It's a word, but kind of using her in a sense, which I kind of see, because then he ended up calling like a day later when they had gotten back to a hotel, the two men with Parkinson's and the blind man, when they had got back to a hotel, he was just like, well, I already got these new tenants and they're going to come in and thank God, and they're churchmen and they're going to rent the place out with me and yada, yada, yada. So it was looking really sketchy for a second. So then Rhoda ended up, the police situation did not work. So I think this was like Saturday, Sunday-ish. The man ended up getting another hotel, switching out of that hotel from the original hotel into another hotel. And they were told that they weren't going to get the place because it was too soon. No. They think that they told Billy, we don't need your place. We got our own place. And then that's what happened. Oh, yeah, that was the other situation with Keisha. Keisha either like told some kind of false information. Keisha is a mess. Keisha is a mess. That was the other thing. Keisha telling the services they need more help than what they think, and then also Billy. These all play them in a factor. Them telling Billy that, oh, we got this place, when they didn't, because it was just like false pretenses. They didn't know that the services thought it was going to go swiftly, but it didn't go as swift as possible. But they needed a place to go, which was so crazy. Like, these people were home. These two guys were homeless. Billy's not letting them in. Billy, when the police came, Billy had called Keisha, and I was just like, why is he calling Keisha? He's not. I thought he didn't have the lease with Keisha. He didn't have the lease with Keisha. That's my whole thing. Why is he calling? He had called Keisha. Keisha had lied to the officers, telling them, I forgot what, but they had lied to the officers. She had lied to the officers on the phone. That's why that whole like police situation did not go well. So people finally are calling back Rhoda, are finally answering Rhoda's initial like adult services abuse, and they need help because of the VA. They ended up going to like the social services office on Monday, and Rhoda gave up a couple of times throughout this, but she ended up getting back into it. But I think Rhoda's thing is, I thought, a couple, like during the summer, I really thought Rhoda was going to stick to, y'all really need to pay Rhoda for these consulting fees. Especially because Rhoda is very powerful, especially in the money aspect, but also she's very knowledgeable in certain other aspects of helping people out, no doubt. That is not, that's a fact. But I feel like Rhoda needs to clamp down on, I don't care who it is. I need the consulting fee or whatever fee that it is that she has. She has the advertising part with the money, but it's like these consulting fees to actually, air and go on live and tell the story. You need to make them give some kind of financial, because you can't just be going back and forth saying, you can't be mad at them when they end up, in a sense, doing you wrong, Rhoda. At least you'll get, a financial gain out of it. You'll be paid for your services and your power. They're paying for services. At least they'll be paying for something. And it's not just free. I feel like everything is free. Yeah, that's all I said. Because she goes back and forth with, like, giving up and being mad at them. But it's like, you can't be completely mad because you're doing it for free and you're doing it. So she ends up going to the social services. The nurses are up there, the caseworker, they're waiting for like an hour for somebody to come down and take the report. Nobody comes. They end up leaving because the blind man, it was really heartbreaking because it was confusing. It was heartbreaking because they were going to be put in shelters. And the thing is, one is blind. How are you going to put a blind man in a shelter? And the shelter was from 9 p.m. to 7 a.m. I'm like, what? 9 p.m.? 7 a.m.? Okay, I kind of get, but 9 p.m.? That's very late. That's really late. Really, really late. But they had the shelter. They were going to take him to the shelter, and his nurse wasn't really saying where he was going, but she was like, I'm taking him somewhere. The blind man didn't have a phone, so she was like, there's no way for me to contact him. She's videotaping him. She's like, this is what, these services that our tax money go to. They're just, they can't, the home health care won't even give them a night stay in a place until we at least try to get something else rectified. So it was really weird and heartbreaking seeing like this blind man being taken away by his caseworker to a shelter, but there's a plot twist at the end of this one. So then we were waiting. She goes back inside with the Mr. Darryl, I think, who has like Parkinson's. And so he's like, yeah, I'm going to go. They're going to take me to another shelter. And she's like, well, where are you going to go? He's like, I'm just going to ride the bus all day. And he's like, I'm fine with riding the bus. And she was just like, this is what, America, not America, but at the end of the day, this is what America is, letting our adult, and that's her other big issue was like, I'm putting in complaints. That's the other thing. Everybody's at work, but they're not at their desk, right? Everybody's getting paid, but they're not at work. And it's like these people are being paid, but nobody's getting back to her. She's waiting for somebody to come downstairs or come out of their office or come off a break to come talk to her and take their complaint. And nobody's doing anything. And it's taking weeks. And she's like, imagine how many other adult people are being abused and their needs aren't being taken care of, or their story isn't being taken care of by the proper officials. So she made a really good point. Like, the people are being murdered and the people are being, the kidnappers, they're going to think this is okay to do these terrible things because nobody's going to be looking for whoever is missing or the baby or whatever. She made some really good points. So, as they're leaving, because they were going, I think, to the shelter, right? Yeah, I think they were going to the shelter with the man with Parkinson's, and she was going to film that part. As they're leaving, the police show up. And from my understanding is somebody in the building called the police on Rhoda because he said initially there was some kind of like arguing or back and forth. Now, Rhoda, you know, she gets a little loud and she wasn't arguing. She was just like being very theatrical and playful, yet serious, being, you know, her Rhoda self. And so he was like, we got a call saying, you know, there was like arguing going on and stuff like that. And she's like, no, there wasn't any arguing going on. I was just trying to get this story to the proper officials so they can give us resources or just take the information, just something. So I won't be, because I've been calling for weeks and nobody's been answering. Nobody's been able to get back to me. It's been silence. So, now I believe the officer was really nice. He was just like, okay, I'm going to go try to get somebody to get to your story. He's like, I'm going to step in and try to rectify the situation for you. I believe nobody ended up coming out to hear this crazy ass story about Kacia St. Clair scamming, you know, these scamming and being a horrible landlord to these people. Billy being a horrible horrible roommate and / nurse to these two men. Plot twist. So at the end of the day, the plot twist of all plot twists, the lights got turned back on, and I believe one of the men, maybe both of them, ended up back in the house. Now I'm exhausted. Because I'm like, all of that just to get where we were trying to get in the first place. All of that just to get the men back into the house. Because Billy, and then there was like the theories of why Billy didn't, why Billy let the man back in, or one of the men back in, because, you know, he's broke and he can't afford to get all the money. He doesn't have all the money to pay the rent. So he's like, I might as well just take these two back in. And then I believe one of the nurses, the nurse whose mother called in, she was like, I think she got fired from her job because somehow they think she violated, well, I guess maybe, well, I'm not, maybe it is sort of violating the HIPAA laws about telling medical information. Maybe they could have left that part out, but in a sense, it wasn't necessarily beyond. I don't know. In a sense, I can see, but I don't think Bianca, I think is just a bystander in the situation. Her mother, I guess she shouldn't have told her mother to say specifics, but in order to get the story out, a blind man and a man with Parkinson's disease, the elderly people in our community are being, you know, treated horribly during a winter storm, and nobody's doing anything about it. So Bianca ended up getting like her job, losing her job over that, which is unfortunate. And hopefully, you know, she can find another employment. But how exhausting. Thank you so much for listening to this. Rhoda Young, Billy, Daryl, etc. Kacia St. Clair. You can all look at this up on Rhoda's Facebook, Rhoda Young Live. I think it's Rhoda Young Live TV. Hopefully we have some more. Yeah, we need more fun stories from Rhoda. Thank you so much for listening. I gotta go. Bye.
Actually want that one. Okay. Or who are we making cookies for, boo?
The whole family.